Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammie and Michelle.
I have a lot of things that I want to do when I'm on sabbatical. And Michelle is the one who pointed out that maybe I'm being unrealistic.
That sounds way harsher than what I said.
It's true, though. Yes, maybe I want to go running every day and cycling every day, and maybe I want to do spinning classes. Maybe I envisioned myself rollerblading outside to ABBA while making a little video. But if you haven't done that, are you dreaming big enough? Plus, I want to be a competitive ballroom dancer, learn Malayalam, and work on the podcast more.
Not to mention start your YouTube channel, visit your friends, start to meal prep. I'm assuming all of this happens after a major move. And look, I get it, Sammie, because when I left my job and I took some time off, I had big ambitions too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having big ambitions and dreams and projects that you want to put on your plate. But the reason I'm happy we're talking today about really asking yourself, like, do you have too much on your plate? Is because what I realized is I had so much guilt because I wasn't accomplishing the things I wanted to accomplish. And it was partially because I wasn't acknowledging that there were a lot of projects, quote unquote, going on in my life. They weren't necessarily paid projects like work, but I had so many other things going on.
It's true, Michelle. And I know, being someone who lived in the same home as you, in fact, shared the bedroom with you, slept on the floor while you slept on the bed. I know one of these projects was being a daughter to our Indian family parents.
Yes. Other than the fact that I moved across the country, left my job, was transitioning into unemployment, a sabbatical, a new city. It was COVID. Really, the biggest project I was not giving credit to was Mummy Daddy and enjoying time in their home. Because let me paint a picture for you. First off, I love my parents, and I was really excited to have this opportunity to live with them again for a year. But I also thought, hey, this might be an opportunity for me to launch a new creative career. But I forgot that there are many things that go into living with my parents. 1, eating all the time.
Eating is a job when you're Indian.
When we say, do you have too much on your plate, we almost mean literally.
We mean literally.
Wake up in the morning. My dad was like, did you eat an egg? At lunch, I would eat again. Then I would probably eat before my mom came home. And then they would decide that wasn't enough food. So I'd have to eat rice and chicken curry and sambar and all of this really delicious food that would make me so tired. Then I would make tea for my parents. Somehow I became the chaiwala of our home. And we would watch Jeopardy together. They would think I was a little genius when I was saying, what is an atom? We would do Wheel of Fortune, which honestly my dad was pretty good at. And whatever other show came on after that. How I got hooked on The Bachelor. And reminder, I watched 0 television before I moved in with my parents.
And The Bachelor is kind of a whole project. It involves watching the show, following the Instagram, following the Bachelor podcast, Googling YouTube videos about the stars.
I am embarrassed to admit that the Bachelor podcast was my top listened to podcast that year.
Yikes, a doodle.
Which I listened to 9,000 hours of podcast. So to be my #1 podcast in 2021 was a pretty big deal. And I knew at that time I had a problem. But something that really helped me was when I realized that I need to, 1, acknowledge the different projects I have in my life. And also, I learned how to do more by doing less.
And that's why Warren Buffett, yes, Warren Buffett.
Billionaire.
McDonald's eater. That part, maybe we wouldn't recommend. We've tried it. It's not recommended.
We actually have the same diet as Warren Buffett, so we'll probably make it to 92.
That's why Warren Buffett says the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything.
Yes. I mean, no. Let's get into it, Sammie. But before that, I wanted to introduce a podcast that I've been listening to, my friend Devin's podcast, Paid in Full, which, if you're listening to this when it comes out, you'll notice that I was interviewed on his podcast last week.
She did an amazing job.
Sammie loved it.
I did. I was moved.
But the one thing I really love about Devin's podcast is that he interviews people who are on a different path, who have, very similar to us and our listeners, have said, you know what? I don't know if I want to do this 9 to 5, dedicate my life to work kind of thing. And so he does a really great job exploring the journeys of different entrepreneurs, creators, YouTubers, people like me that are just figuring stuff out and want to share parts of our journey. And I highly recommend it. We honestly talked for about almost like an hour and a half, and he still whittled it down to an hour and got all the best parts. He's great at listening, great at asking questions, and so I highly recommend checking out Paid in Full.
Back to our topic for today. Do you have too much on your plate?
Yes, thanks for asking, Sammie.
Michelle and I were listening to Charlie Gilkey on the Sparked podcast with Jonathan Fields, and he was talking about the 5 projects rule.
Yes, Sammie. And if you know me, if you read my writing, you know I'm a big Charlie Gilkey fan. I actually credit start finishing.
She's guilty of that.
I read his book, Start Finishing, last year, and of the literally 20 self-help books I read last year, I really credit that one with helping me become more of a doer. And a huge part of that was this idea he talks about in this podcast, this idea he talks about in his book, which is thinking about your life in projects.
Yes, and he specifically recommends limiting it to 5 projects. And we're talking about this because we know that we have awesome listeners who are smart, ambitious, family-oriented. They've got a lot going on. And they, like Warren Buffett, want to be very successful people in whatever way that means to them.
Exactly, Sammie. Here's the thing that Gilkey introduced that really blew my mind. And it was that he highlights that a project, it's not about whether or not you get paid for it. It's not about whether or not it's considered work. A project is anything that takes up your time, energy, and attention. And when you think about that, there's a lot of things that can fall under that scope.
For example, Indian parents.
Mom, dad, helping them get into their Facebook, which it turns out there's 3 Facebooks. And also the main Facebook is somehow connected to my mom's phone number from her job in Michigan from 10 years ago. But this is my dad's Facebook. One of his 3 Facebooks. Anyway, that's how you spend your time sometimes.
When you're thinking about what projects you want to do, Charlie Gilkey recommends starting by writing down all the possible projects that you might want to do.
Yeah, Sammie, it's interesting because I did this last year, but you and I did this before this podcast episode. I've been feeling burnt out recently, and I looked at my project list, and I've taken on 3 freelance roles. I turned on paid subscriptions on my Substack, in case you want to subscribe. I also have been working on making improvements to this podcast. In an ideal world, I want to eat better. I want to do more yoga. I'm going to Colorado. I went to 2 weddings and had 2 bachelorettes on my schedule. I got invited to another wedding and another bachelorette. The projects are piling on, is what I'm saying.
It seems like your schedule's gotten a lot busier from when you were making chai for our parents and becoming an informal and unofficial expert of The Bachelor.
Yes, I dream of those times now.
And this list that you create of everything that you would consider a project, it can literally include anything. For example, for me, I was imagining if I could have all the time in the world, one of my projects is personal hygiene. And I don't mean to sound gross, but as I've mentioned on previous episodes, I've been doing the least, just showering, getting myself clean. But I want to do the most. Spending 10-15 minutes lotioning, spending 45 minutes getting ready. That's the kind of stuff I love to do. So that was on my list. As well as things like podcasting, meal prepping, learning Malayalam, working out,
Rollerblading to ABBA.
meeting up with my friends, making new friends. The list was quite long.
We gotta baptize a kid. It's a long list.
We got kids that need to be bapped. Things need to get done.
It's so helpful to see everything that's on your to-do list, even your goals for your lifetime, because those are just living in your head. And so you're just adding these different things to your should list, basically, without making a plan of action for them. If you're like me, that list of projects is 2 pages long. It is a far cry from the 3 to 5 minimum that Charlie recommends.
So that's step number 2. Narrowing this list down to 3 to 5 projects for the quarter. 3 months is a quarter. 5 projects max, which I thought was very few.
Everybody does. But the thing is that you can either pretend like you're going to do 20 things and get nothing done.
Preach.
Or you can actually make a focused effort and say, hey, like I know 1 to 2 things, like my kids being home for the summer or my parents visiting are definitely going to take up my time. And sure, I want to focus on the podcast. I want to move us to video. I want to write. You have to narrow it down. And then once you get those things figured out, maybe once you've built a habit for your daily yoga schedule, then you can actually next quarter focus on another 3 to 5 projects or carry over the ones that you need to finish. But if you actually narrow it down, the irony is that you'll accomplish more because you're not trying to spread yourself thin over 10 different things. And you're being very realistic about what is manageable in your life right now.
And now that you know the 3 to 5 things that you would love to be working on, it's a good idea to take a look at your last week or the last few weeks and see what you've actually been working on.
Yeah. Are you on the phone for hours a day, talking to different people on the internet? Yes, maybe I am. And maybe I like that, but is it something I want to make a project? Not always. So that was something, for example, Sammie, that can take a lot of time on my calendar, but I wanted to be a little bit mindful of the fact that I was maybe overdoing it, especially since I'm already giving a lot of time to the communities I'm in right now.
It's true, Michelle. I, being the Excel lover that I am, liked making out a literal schedule of my week and mapping out the week in time blocks and seeing where all my time's going. If you're a long-time listener of the podcast or even short-time listener, you know it was going to work. But this really opened my eyes to how I really don't have any time for any projects. However, once I do, I'm going to be limiting it to the 3 to 5 projects that I desire.
I love that, Sammie. Whether you're looking at your Google Calendar the last week or you want to map it hour by hour the way Sammie does, do whatever works best for you, but take a real look at how you're spending your time and see, does it align with how I want to be spending my time? Are there places where I can swap one project with another? And I think this is definitely where Warren Buffett has a great point. Saying no to almost everything is the difference between getting things done or getting nothing done.
It's true, Michelle. When I was looking at these projects, I realized that I was getting in over my head for my future sabbatical period without even starting it. And I'm glad that you mentioned that I probably should look at everything I want to do and cut things out because it made me appreciate that, hey, I'm not going to get all the things that I want to get done completed in that first month or 2, which can help reduce guilt, but it can also help focus your energy so that the things that you are working on actually progress. And it prevents things like me hearing something about Chinese dynasties and thinking, maybe I'll learn about all the Chinese dynasties when I'm on my break. I don't know anything about that.
I know, Sammie, it's tempting when you hear someone reference something to want to add it to your to-do list.
I was like, unless we're adding it to shower time or lotion time, I'm bringing out the cocoa butter, listening to Genghis Khan information on an audiobook, that could be an option.
Yeah, take care of those ashy elbows while going deep into the century-long history of China.
A little pairing of projects. Unless I'm doing something like that, the Chinese dynasty is probably not going to happen in this lifetime.
And honestly, you can combo things. I mean, look at you, Sammie. You read more books and listen to more podcasts than anyone I know, despite not having any time outside of your work. But you double up when you're doing your notes, or you double up when you're in the office. So
don't tell the office.
Sammie listening to her patient, meanwhile Terry Groves in her ear.
Just like, what did you say? No kidding.
Sorry, 1 second. Did you know that some houses in California are falling off of their cliffs? Wild. Last year, I started to track how many things I was saying no to, and it was a little bit insane. It was going on a trip with my friends on a houseboat, going to Antarctica. Someone had suggested that. Saying no to visiting our friends in Atlanta. Like, there's so many things that end up coming up that after a while, I was like, no wonder I feel tired and guilty because I'm saying no to so many things. But also, I appreciated how much time that was making in my schedule.
It's so crazy, Michelle, how we can say yes to so many things on accident and how that just eats up our schedule and then makes it so that we can't progress at our goals.
Exactly. And it's not that I don't want to do those things. It's just that I have to say no to 90% of things so that I can be successful in the things that I want to focus on.
Takeaways.
Takeaways for this episode. First, start by making a list of everything you would want to do.
Do you want to go to Tokyo? Do you want to have a kid? Do you want to start playing the piano? Do you want to meet more people?
Do you want to organize a rollerblading flash mob to Dancing Queen?
Yes. I mean, no.
In your list of everything that you could want to do, you can put it on there. But step 2, limit it to 5 projects maximum. 3 is even better.
And compare it to your current calendar. Are there things that are taking up your times, unintentional projects that maybe aren't a top priority for you? If you're giving time to it, you're prioritizing it. So it's important to know, what are the things I'm actually prioritizing in my life right now? And does it line up with the 3 to 5 projects that I want to be focused on?
Then say no to everything else.
No, no, no. Me, you, Warren Buffett.
Think of saying no as saying yes to the things you want to do. Because, truthfully, you can't do everything.
Yeah, we're spending so much time doing things that honestly aren't in alignment. And that's something we talk about so often on Build a Wealthy Spirit. How you want to focus on doing the things that are meaningful to you. Doing the things that you want to do. And you don't have to feel guilty about what those things are. You do have to be honest with yourself and realize that anything you're giving time, energy, and attention to is something that's going to take away a different project from your list.
It's like Charlie Gilkey said when he was talking about the Tao Te Ching on the Sparked podcast. That which goes against its nature cannot long endure.
Oof, that hits.
When I hear that, I think preach. Think about me and my work. I'm like, cannot long endure, because it doesn't leave time for me to do the things that I love doing. And it's so easy to end up in situations like that, where we spend all our time doing so many things that we like, but it prevents us from doing the things that we love.
Exactly. And maybe you have Indian parents who you love, and you want to do as many things as possible with them. But keep in mind that you also have to set boundaries and say no to some things. I love my parents. I love spending time with them. I love talking to them on the phone. I don't need to go with them to every event with their friends. Because if you don't take ownership over your time, it will get filled up by other people.
Community time.
Before we say goodbye, it's our community time.
Community time.
Sammie, you know something that unexpectedly takes up time? Driving around town to see if there's a fire.
Smokey Bear says that where there's smoke, there must be fire.
I don't know that Smokey Bear says that.
Somebody who cares about fire says it. And I smelled smoke, which first of all, accomplishment, because as some of you may recall, in December 2020, I lost my smell and it really didn't come back. And I have been having some progress. So I was sitting in my room typing notes, as I do, and I smelled some smoke. And before this, we had been hearing multiple explosives, fireworks, going off in our very dry, very hot, very windy town.
108 degrees.
On a good day.
Dry heat. But no, it's Independence Week. We should be lighting fireworks everywhere.
Anyway, so I got Michelle and we went outside and yes, there was a giant smoke cloud.
There was so much smoke.
There was so much smoke.
And this was before July 4th.
The unfortunate thing about living in a small town where, to be honest, we're unsure if it would even show up on the news if the whole town burned down, is that small fires are nowhere to be found on the news. I can only go on Facebook hoping that somebody posted about it, and they didn't. So Michelle and I had to get in our car and drive towards the smoke.
Yes.
Looking for fire, like firefighters.
Which it turns out, we didn't really know what direction the smoke was coming in. Sometimes
no,
we went west, we saw some smoke. Sometimes we turned north, there was still some smoke. Turns out there was smoke everywhere. We did not find a fire, though. So I said to Sammie, let's put together our little prepper bag in case we need to leave at some point, but what can we do? And, we went back home. We Googled, are there wildfires near us? Turns out there was wildfires everywhere. But not necessarily.
Not mentioned in our town, but like we said, nothing gets reported here.
Though, actually a few days later, on July 4th, where we didn't see any smoke, someone did, it turns out, mention that there was a fire.
2 fires, in fact. 2 large fires.
Luckily, those were taken care of, but you can imagine that we felt a sense of course. Of course there was.
And let me tell you, the fireworks have not stopped.
No, okay, it's like crazy. When did I become this curmudgeon? I don't know.
I don't like you go outside, you feel the warm, hot wind, and you're like, why would you launch a firework right now?
Above our house.
Mm-hmm. Very frightening. And you might be thinking, oh, these girls, they're paranoid. Well, you know what? We also thought maybe we were being paranoid when we thought, is this radio tower going to fall on our house?
There's also been like 4 or 5 fires in or around a 50-mile radius of our town since we've been here.
I'll say 30-mile radius.
Sometimes 1-mile radius. So it's not crazy. If I stay here another year, I'm campaigning for droid fireworks next year.
Me too. Shoutouts from the community. First, we got a text from our mother who loved our last episode about financial freedom. She said it could have been our best episode yet.
Wow. Thanks, Mom. She listens to everything, so that's a huge compliment.
She said her coworker, Nikki, also liked the episode, so thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki. And actually, a few people on Twitter really resonated with the message. C.A. Green commented, "This is where I'm at now. I'm definitely in the market for a stable income, but want to make sure I'm building up my own side business at the same time." I really think that is something I'm hearing with so many people. They're not necessarily looking to go completely cold turkey from the corporate world. I did it, but I understand why you might want to lean into a little bit more of that stability. Zamir also wrote, "A consistent paycheck can allow you to try your more wild ideas with a convex payoff." And that's true. If you want to shoot for the moon, maybe the best thing to do is fund it again with your little angel investor day job. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, hey, at least you tried.
I love the concept of the angel investor day job.
Yes, me too. And Alani said, "I binged so many of y'all's episodes that it's my second show on Spotify." And he sent a screenshot. Joe Rogan is beating us, which is classic, us being number 2 to Joe Rogan.
It's just the classic us Joe Rogan feud.
Thank you guys for the shout outs, for your comments, for engaging with our work. You can always find us at buildawealthyspirit.com. You can comment on this episode in our show notes. We love commenting back. We love giving you a shout out in our community time. And let us know what your 3 to 5 projects are. Did you write down a list and you, like me, realize you got a lot of cutting down to do? Let us know. buildawealthyspirit.com.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.